It's an ill mind that's still time build and refine. Still getting mine in the nine at nine. Build and refine, build and refine, build and refine. Still getting mine in the nine at nine. Build and refine, still getting mine. Geometric, 9 at 9. Sean J. 9 at 9. Stylus Chris. 9 at 9. DJ as 1. 9 at 9. 9 at 9. Don't touch the dial, you heard?
What's good? What's good, everybody? DJ Geometrics here. Monday night, 9 p.m. Welcome back to the 9 at 9 DJ podcast, the online show where we have 9 DJs on a roundtable panel discussing today's DJ topics. This show is brought to you by Beat Refinery DJ School at Bach to Rock. Learn how to mix, scratch, and make music by visiting beatrefinery.com. We have school locations all across the nation. Tonight is part 2 of episode number 17. Our special guest panel from last week is back here tonight, and we're going to continue the discussion on mental health within the DJ community and dive more on how social media affects it. So once again, welcome back to our special guests, Doc Adams, DJ Koo, DJ Impulse, DJ Alchemist, and Chris Bayer. Yeah.
Guys and a girl.
If you guys missed last week's episode, you can always watch them again on facebook.com/beatrefinery or youtube.com/beatrefinery. So let me go ahead and introduce the rest of my crew. Here with me tonight, my co-hosts, we have DJ Az1.
What's up, guys? Welcome back.
Got Sean J.
Sanjay, who's that? Sean J. What up?
Sean J. You know what, Sean? I was listening to one of the episodes back, and I actually called you John J. or John J. for some reason.
I've got a good homie name. I got a good homie named Sanjay. Yeah, good guy.
So Sanjay, yeah. Tonight you're Indian, so Sanjay.
Sean J is good to be back.
And finally, I'm going to pass off the mic to Stylus Chris. Take it away, man.
What's up, guys? Glad you're back with us here. Another episode, new week. We are going to continue our conversation on a pretty heavy subject that we've all myriad of subjects. It kind of goes in so many different directions, and it's been a really awesome, enlightening conversation to have, not only from personal levels, but also, having two guys like Doc Adam and Chris Baer give us a little bit more insight into how they approach it in their professional lives. And let's start with a quick icebreaker, getting us all warmed up again. Let's just go around quickly and give us like an artist, somebody, a music artist, or even maybe a genre of music if it's not a particular artist that you've been checking out since the quarantine. Somebody new that you've discovered. Who wants to take it right away?
Somebody new?
Yeah, or just like, it doesn't have to be a new artist. Like,
You've been into what have you been vibing with?
Yeah.
Odyssey's got a dope new album.
What tickles your fancy?
I listen to a lot of Bon Iver.
Okay.
On the side, I went to go see them in DC actually, a couple months before lockdown happened.
Nice.
Nice.
The complete opposite of club music.
Yeah,
that's exactly why.
Balance.
Kind of what we were looking for.
I don't even know how this happened, but I got in this weird. Not weird at all. It's just weird that I found it because I don't know how I got there. But I got into a Zamrock wormhole, which is like rock music from Zambia, from the 1970s. So there was this whole scene, this rock and roll scene in Zambia in the 70s. People call it Zamrock. There's a song called Kala, My Friend, Khala, My Friend, by a group called Aganaz that you may have heard before. Like it's one of those songs that when you hear it, you're like, shit, I've heard this. Like I don't know where I heard it, but I've heard it. The Aganaz is one of the main groups. Witch is another one. It's super interesting. It's like kind of psych rocky. Very DJable, honestly, even though like ironically on the last episode I was talking about that, but it is stuff that you could very easily play. It's super funky, like kind of psych rocky, but there's a lot of like indigenous musical elements being infused in it in really, really interesting ways. Totally suggests like I think that I found after I started digging into this stuff, Vice, I think it was Vice, like Noisy did like a little 15-minute thing on Zamrock like 9 or 10 years ago, on like when they were still doing like VBS.TV or whatever. So that's been my little like I like nerding, like getting super nerdy about something and like digging in and rummaging in all the nooks and crannies, and that's been my thing for the last couple months.
Nice. Kim?
I would say I've been just being able to enjoy listening to a lot of really good female artists out there. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're like new to me necessarily. I just get more time to listen now since, like a lot of guys were saying last week, like, your relationship with music kind of changes when you become a DJ. So in terms of just like listening, I've been really doing a lot of listening to Jamila Woods and No Name, some Megan, of course. Yeah.
Have you been playing your viola?
Of course. Yeah, I've been practicing a lot more lately. Pretty nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
Are we doing the box rock thing? From there, should we not be talking about this? Are you doing online lessons?
Oh yeah, sorry.
And stuff and all that. Yeah, I said box rock.
Yep. So
that was very
Well,
big.
Art, this is a podcast for a DJ school, which is under a music school called Bach Rock. So yes, we can talk.
So
We can talk about
They can connect the dots.
when you're at Bach to Rock. Don't talk about Bach to Rock.
I don't know. I kind of it's one of those things. But yeah,
What about
get viola lessons from Kim, guys.
What about you, Impulse? You always music guy, so I'm expecting to hear.
No
Not
pressure.
21 Savage. I have not been listening to that. I have not been listening to Drake. So that's been great.
100 bucks.
No TikTok music?
Jesus Christ, no. I'm trying to think. There's a group that I really like that I keep just going back to called Electric Guest that I'm sure some of you guys like heard. So I'm like really into them. Flying Lotus, Masego. There was one I came across recently. I don't know if it's a group or one person or whatever, called Honey.
Honey.
Really dope. Like nice little mix of kind of like future shit, some housey shit, but also like some lo-fi type shit. But usually if I'm in the house, I'm editing photos or video, I just throw on like the lo-fi, playlist on Spotify and just disconnect with everything. Yeah.
Funny thing about lo-fi, it's like it's so chill and enjoyable, and then you think to yourself, "Man, I could make the illest lo-fi beat," but then you never do it.
No,
But you never do it.
I think every time.
Because your beat turns into some crazy club shit, and it's like, and you're like, oh,
but that's us as DJs.
Yeah.
That's exactly how we think. We can never we always have, when we're making music, for those that make music, we're always thinking about the dance floor. And that's, I don't think that's something that we'll ever be able to detach from. Some people can, but I can't. I want to make shit that makes people move,
Sure. I love bass.
I feel like I can, because I feel like everything I listen to like outside of club shit is like super depressing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find a place to set up a drum kit and start a shitty hardcore band again. So like that's like my That's my main object. Yeah, I need to relearn how to play the drums a little bit because I was once very good at that shit, and now I am not so good. That's what happens when you don't practice. You know, you practice every day for 15 years, and then you don't practice at all for 15 more. It's a little rusty.
Yo, honestly,
Muscle
like
memory's gone.
even like starting like gigging again, like that first gig back, I was like, how does this fucking work again? Like, what is that?
Same. Same.
I heard stories of a lot of guys like with first gig back, like leaving thing, you know, like
Oh yeah,
left their MacBook charger, or you know, one guy even saw like
That's me.
like got to the club and left his MacBook at home. You know, just like got there and was like, oh, I guess I'm DJing with Record Box on USBs tonight. Because I opened the DJ.
Chris Bear, you got any good music?
Yeah, Chris Bear, what you got?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Like a lot of different stuff. I like. I've been listening to the Avalanches, which is this. If you haven't checked them out, it's this super layered.
Dope.
Yeah, I like them.
Really good.
Latest album. I listened to a decent amount of psych rock, so like Brian Jonestown Massacre and that kind of stuff. And then I also
big fan.
Really, yeah.
yeah.
And I like also really old like DJ Crush stuff, like the super like minimal. So I like that.
930 Club back in the day.
Yeah, that was a sick show. That was a sick show.
Yeah. So that shows you how old I am, you know. So those are the things I've been listening to.
Nice. I think we all
we have good taste.
Yeah, or we all, you know, we all should. It's important to always remember that this is, you know, a bunch of guys and girls and that make their way through listening to a lot of music on a, you know, week to week basis. And it's not only part of our job, but it's, you know, we got into it. Gio and I used to always make sure when we were first starting the program, the DJ program, we used to tell people, like, you're not going to really be a great DJ if you don't, like, love music beyond a normal person's love. Like, if you say you, like, love music, I want to see if you truly love music. And then we, you know, sometimes people realize they don't really love music. They just kind of like it a lot. And there's a difference, and there's almost an obsession to.
It's the willingness to go digging. I think that's what separates the crowd. But actually, I think to transition that into the conversation at hand, there's that big separation. We've been talking about it in the previous episode as well as a little bit today, of like going on the hunt and going into DJ mode where you're just trying to find things for the express purpose, like Doc Adams said before, of like, I'm listening for a particular thing that's going to make this useful for an edit or useful for a DJ set. And I think one of the things that I definitely want to pose as a question to everybody is, how do you separate your mind from, I am DJ Sean J over here, but I'm also Sean Johnson, a person that
from
likes
work mode to
work
to
mode and personal mode split. Like, how do you separate the two? Or does anybody else feel like that's a difficult split to make? Because I'm struggling with that.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think the one thing that comes to my mind is the fact that I guess when people speak about me, the one term that tends to jump up is the word humble, I guess. And I guess like in my personal life, I am very much so. On stage, it's a different story, but that's more of like an act, you know.
Yeah, especially as a turntablist, you have to put on a persona that's a lot more animated.
Battle mentality.
A lot more animated. Yeah, and I am that animated guy, you know, but at the end of the day... Wait, what was the question?
How do you separate the two? Yeah, you can turn it on, but like, how do you decide?
You walk to school or bring
to do one or the other?
Yeah, it's
because art is as one.
Right, but at the end of the day, as one, aka Atitsi Bunurong, has a family just like everybody else. He's got people that are out there that are hitting me up who don't give a shit about DJ or music stuff. You know, and those people are the ones that, you know, you don't talk about every day on social media. We know this for a fact. These are the people that we talk to every day through our personal private text chains, our families, our sisters, our brothers, our cousins. or so I think it's like my family, helps me separate that, because at the end of the day, like my little sister, we're about 11 years apart, and I tell you what, this one time I had Chris Carnes came to town. I had Chris Carnes at my place. We were sessioning. I said, hey, my sister was in the neighborhood. She was hanging out with my mom, and she didn't stay there at the time. And they were there, and she was like, is he staying? I was like, he is. I was like, he's a fucking world champion, bro. Like, fucking world champion. She's like, I don't care. Where is he going to sleep? Are you going to have him sleep on that? Are you going to sleep him on that nasty ass couch, dude? Like, I'm going to make a bed for him, and she made like this bed for him, like it's like family that helps keep me grounded. They just don't care about all the other shit that everybody else gasses you up about,
I think it's important to have friends that aren't DJs.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think as I'm coming into my own now, I'm honestly having less and less of those. To be honest with you, I more
friends that are not DJs or friends that are DJs.
No, new friends that aren't DJs. I guess
as as a
38-year-old man, like you have your acquaintances, you have your professional life, and then you have the people that you've known for 30-some years, like whether you like them or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people know you before you were you, like the guy that's, So I think,
you have to have, we discussed this in like one of our meetings before our production meeting. We were talking about like how, especially like NBA players or any celebrities, like the closest friend that they have really are the ones that they grew up with, or like the ones they went to college, or like.
Don't lie, we were talking about this about Justin Bieber, bro.
Justin Bieber, because Justin Bieber has that new song, and he talks about how he was like basically, the song is Lonely, and he was saying like how he didn't have, when he started fucking up, as a teen, he didn't have any but like real close friends to really ground him, because you'll have like a lot of NBA players, like most of their athletes, like NFL, NBA, once you make that money, your close friends are your inner circle, like the people that you grew up with. And he was saying he didn't have that because he got famous at a young age, and I think that's really important for like as far as like, yeah, at the end of the day, DJing is a lonely job, I mean, most of the time you're just there in the booth, and you're driving home all by yourself, driving to the gig by yourself.
Well, I wanted to,
all the hard work is all by yourself, like the behind the scenes stuff.
All the
I want to real quick. I want to throw that over to Doc Adam, just because he deals with this in his field a bit, like. Why is it as Americans particularly that we have this big struggle with dealing with loneliness? I mean, in this Western culture.
I think a lot of it, I mean, so it's interesting. A few different things come to mind. I was actually, ironically or weirdly or maybe super appropriately, was just thinking about Ralph Waldo Emerson. It was like, Emerson's one of my favorite writers, sort of American transcendentalist, oftentimes referred to, writing in like the 1840s and 1850s in New England. And there's an essay by him called The American Scholar that was actually a lecture he gave, I think, at Harvard. And in there, like, there's this really famous section of the essay where he says, in America, I fear that, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact quote, but in America, I fear that we are turning into our roles. Right, so we are becoming farmer, we are becoming carpenter, we are becoming painter, instead of man farming, man carpenting, man painting, right? Like there's, like in other words, like we lose ourselves in his case, he's talking about occupations, right? The idea that we start to treat the thing that we do as the means by which we make our money, right? The thing that provides us our money becomes the entirety of our identity, and we don't have anything independent of that, right? All of our sense of self-worth is tied to it. The way that we navigate the world is tied to it. The way that we form our relationships are tied to it, right? And but at the end of the day, those things are fundamentally transient, right? Like the pandemic hits and you can't do your job anymore, then like, what the fuck am I? You know what I mean? Like that, like I don't have a self anymore, because all I've ever known myself as is this particular circuit in a financial marketplace, right? That like I output labor doing this thing and intake money, intake money in exchange, and all of my relationships are framed and formed based upon that role that I have. So that was the one I was just thinking about that, because like when I was I think when I was still drinking, I have struggled with insecurity, like imposter complexy type stuff my entire life. I grew up in like a super small town in the middle of nowhere. I went to like terrible public, I big fan of public schools, but I went to a really terrible one. Like the smallest state accredited public school in the state of Michigan. I was one of two people from my graduating class that went to college. Like everyone else either went into the military or just stayed there. I had 4 years of mandatory wood shop in high school. So when I went to college, I was like shook, because I was like, oh my God, all these people are so fucking smart. They read all these books. They know all this shit. Like, and that stuff's followed me around forever. Like, regardless of how many degrees I got or how much I accomplished or this, that, and the other thing, I always felt like I was an outsider and like I didn't belong. And so DJing gave me this shine, right? Because in the eyes of kids that I thought they were too cool for me, DJing was the thing that was like my in, that was like my in. They were like, oh, he's the DJ, that's dope. Then all of a sudden I was like cool guy, right? But it was so stressful for me the entire time, because I was still thinking like, what if they find out? Like, what if they find out I'm this dork? What if they find out I'm not actually this like cool guy that they think I am? This is going to be fucking terrible. So when I would meet someone who didn't care about DJing, right, and I would have a conversation with them, I would have this moment where I would panic, because I'm like, well, how am I going to make them think I'm cool? Right. But then I would simultaneously have this moment where I'm like, oh shit, I don't have to be cool right now. And it was this massive sense of relief of not having to try to feel like a cool guy for a moment, where I was able to step away from it. That was what I was thinking about initially when we were talking about this, was sort of my relationship with that, when I like, back to the Emerson thing, when I ceased to be like human, I ceased to be like DJ and started to think of myself as like human DJing, meaning like a human who DJs sometimes. I'm also a human who reads books sometimes. I'm also a human who has a sister, and I'm a human who has a nephew, and I'm a human who has a wife, and I'm a human who has 2 cats. And like all of these things, all these relationships I have are the things that actually like make me who I am. Like, it's the sum total of all of them. It's not any one, right? But to your question about America, I think the thing is like, it comes back to something we were talking about in the previous episode, right? We're trained to think of ourselves as fundamentally as individuals, right? Like individuals who don't need anyone else. Like, American culture is fundamentally like a zero-sum game, right? Like, there's winners and there's fucking losers, and like in every interchange, someone wins and someone loses.
Greed
right?
is good and all that.
Yeah. And this is just it's baked into our culture, like at a very fundamental level. So one of the things that ends up meaning for us, I think, is that we are, whether we know it or not, and I'm being a bit of like a psychoanalyst here, like all of us from the time we're very young are like, and I saw this a lot, like in my years and going to like 12-step meetings, when you're like hanging out with other drunks and drug addicts who are like being really vulnerable. Like everyone, the toughest looking dude you ever saw, everyone's like, I've been lonely for as long as I can remember. Like I've been lonely. I've been being lonely from the time I was a little kid to the present day. Like I've been fucking lonely. I either didn't know it, or I tried to hide it, or I tried to cover over it, or I was told, and I think this is the part about American culture, I was told that feeling that way was a sign of weakness, right? So we've been we've been trained, especially for men, right? This is like I won't go on like my whole. I have issues with the notion of toxic masculinity for a variety of reasons, because I think the term is over. I think the term is abused and not used in particularly helpful ways, generally speaking. But like, that is an aspect of masculinity that is toxic, right? It's this idea that like I alone can like solve all of my own problems, and I don't need anyone else other than myself. Like, we are fundamentally social, communal creatures. That's what we are. Like, we're built to live with others and to, you know, we are at our happiest. I mean, this is something that there's plenty of data to show when we're working with others to solve communal problems, right? When I have like a role in a larger project with other people, and I wake up in the morning and I know exactly what role I'm playing that day, and I have a sense of purpose that's connected to a greater, you know, a good greater than myself. But we don't live in a culture like that, so we're not equipped, you know, we're also not equipped then to think about being lonely, because we're told that means we're being weak, that, you know. So when the loneliness hits us, it's not just the first bout of loneliness hitting you, right? It's that loneliness, and then chances are however many other years of loneliness that you have papered over and pretended weren't there. It just, exactly, it fucking avalanches on the top of you, you know, and you might not have the, you know, the vocabulary or like the, you know, what, you know, particular like theoretical apparatus or whatever to articulate it. But I think there's that sense of just, I think that's oftentimes what happens with the like midlife crisis, is it's someone who's like been living kind of with the, like, thinking they're on the fake it till you make it train, you know, and they hit the point when all of a sudden they realize there is no make it. You know what I mean? Like they've done all the things they were told they needed to do to be happy and be successful, and they accomplish it, and they're like, fuck, I'm still sad, or I still feel like there's something missing, right? In that moment, that's why you see these breakdowns.
I still feel people, whack.
Yeah, you know, and that's why you see these breakdowns, and then because of what American culture is fundamentally a consumer culture. Like, the way we try to deal with it, that's the cliche of the midlife crisis. You know, I buy the convertible, and I start doing a lot of cocaine at 47 and trying to bang 21-year-olds at the club and being a total creepazoid, right, or whatever, because that's what our culture, like, here, you know, that's what we valorize, and you know, so people retreat to that. But like, at the end of the day, the fact that we're taught that like we should be proud to be individuals, and that is the thing that we should hang our hat on most, makes us the most poorly equipped to deal with the feeling of being lonely. I think that's really what it comes down to from my perspective. I think that's like why we are so ill-equipped. Like, friends of mine who are, you know, even friends of mine in Germany. I lived in Germany for a couple of years when I was in grad school. Even friends of mine there, when I've talked to them during the pandemic, you know, the first day when I spoke to them, they were like, "Man, I'm so sad. This sucks. Like, I'm lonely. This is gonna really blow." Like, they were, I didn't really think about it at the time, but I'm like, oh, they are processing their emotions in a healthy way immediately, without like burying them and covering them over and pretending they're tough and that they aren't feeling these things and that they need to hide them. They're just addressing them right now as they're coming up. They're being addressed, you know. And so when you talk to them 6 weeks later, they're like in a significantly better headspace than all my dumbass friends here, who were like trying to be super cool guy about it, and then all of a sudden, you know, 2 months in, everything fucking crumbled. You know, because
let's take that point right there. I want to show of hands real quickly. Who's seen the movie The Social Dilemma? Because I think there's a lot in there. What you just said, Doc Adam. Show
pieces
hands. Pieces of it. All right. After seeing that movie, do we feel like? Well, anybody feel free to chime in on this one. Do you feel that the way that American culture is structured is like preying on the weaknesses we have in our individuality?
I'll keep talking.
let's bring Chris Bear in on this. Chris Bear.
I'm just going to say this one thing, which is that, you know, the saying that goes in the software development community that if you're not buying the product, you are the product.
That was a line that stuck out for me from that. Yeah.
Yeah, they said that.
Your dopamine is for sale, and so all UX is designed to bring the interface. I mean, we used to sit across from a television, and now we're here, the screen's closer, and VR is even closer. The closer we can get to our neurology, the quicker we have the ability to influence behavior. So it's an existential challenge of our time. I was talking to the kids. I have two daughters that are, they're 13, 15. And I was saying, it's like we're living in a century now, like 20 years into this century. We haven't had a world war yet, thank God, but we have had COVID. But if you think about the difference between the 1800s and the 1900s, it was pretty different. It's going to be super different, I think, between 1900s and the 2000s, and it's going to look more like this kind of stuff. So we will need to get pretty serious and self-aware and self-reflective about how we choose to spend our present moment, whatever that present moment is. Being intentional about it. Otherwise, someone else will make the choice for us, and it'll jump our synapses before we even know it's happening.
Skynet is self-aware.
Yeah, I got to jump in just briefly off the back of that, because working in advertising, same thing with UX. It's hilarious, as somebody with a PhD in philosophy, as a philosophy professor, studied culture at a really deep and fundamental level. My 5 years working in strategy at advertising agencies and elsewhere have taught me that the reality of the world we live in is so much uglier than I was ever able to critically analyze my way to. Everything is so much more fucked up than I thought it was. Nothing. Somebody, this is a random example of this, and this isn't really answering the question you asked, but and then I don't know, I don't want to dive into politics stuff, and that's not my intent here, but when Kamala, there was a photo of her, there was two photos of her in a couple of days in a row where she had one day I think she had Tim's on, and then there was another day she had Chuck Taylor's on, and all of Twitter was a buzz about
the context.
Yas Queen, sick, look at her kicks, blah blah blah, so cool, so cool. She's got such great style, and all I can think when I'm seeing this is I'm people don't understand that do people not know that they focus grouped 80 different pairs of shoes for the better part of 6 months before that happened. None of that shit is by accident. Nothing you see is by accident. All of it is planned. All of it is constructed. All of it is tested. All of it is market researched. It's focus grouped in it's all dialed in. It's all dialed in with if you're resonating to it, chances are you are in the psychographic bucket that the shit was built for. It's all of this stuff is just, it's built to prey upon, to your question, right? It's built to prey on the particular neuroses, whatever you want to call them, of different segments of the populace. The job, and I'm not saying this is not to make myself sound
the
terrible.
key is to keep the consumer engaged. That's pretty much social media business models.
Yeah.
Keep them in the casino, baby.
Yeah.
Engage.
Keep chips on the table.
And that's just brand building, period, right? Whether it's and I think that's the thing. Last thing I'll say about this, I think the biggest thing with social media to me is that I don't think people have really started to reckon with, independent of all of the addictive dopamine aspects of the actual user interfaces, is the fact that we have a generation of people now who have raised themselves or been raised as a brand. Right. like, because that's what we are for the most part when we're online, is we're a brand, right? Like if you've ever had a thought, if you've ever thought to yourself, I don't know if I should post this or not, it doesn't really fit on my feed, right? That's because you're a brand, right? Like, and you've changed from being a person into being a brand, and that's fucking weird. Right, that's very, very, very weird.
Wow.
Right, there's something intensely bizarre about that, and like not really a way that I don't know that we necessarily have the tools to understand, you know, the damage that might be doing to people in terms of how they relate to themselves internally. You know, like because I always tell people
And
that,
other
like,
people.
and other people, oh for sure, because all of us are then engaging surfaces to surfaces, you know, and like. There's an assumption that there's depth behind the surface, but like at what point does that depth actually disappear?
It's all a hall of mirrors, you know.
Yes,
really.
yeah.
It was as one you were saying, talking about your fans, I think earlier on, like how, and this goes actually for everybody. What is it like having fans? Like I had some fans, but it was like 4, maybe 7. How has that shaped the way you look at yourself?
Oh yeah, man, that's a good question. Like, you know, back to the mental health thing. I think there's definitely a point in time where I let ego take control of the wheel. Ego was driving, you know, the wheelhouse at that point, and that's when things got really crazy, really dark, really quickly, you know, and it's I think for me though, what's humbling for me is that I always looked at myself as some kid who I don't know, growing up being short, short Asian kid who looks Hispanic in going to grade school in Montgomery County, Maryland. Like, you know, I think about this basketball. I got picked last. I wanted to be on the They didn't even give me a shot. And it's like, that guy, no. You know, like I was always going through this whole thing where I had to work really hard to I don't know, just to get noticed, I guess. And not that I really cared, but you know, I think for me, it's at the point now where I think culturally, I look at myself, and I've said this before, I'm a fan first, right? So I'm a fan of the culture, and me being a fan led me to being where I am now because I was so nerdy about it, just like wanting to do it, you know, wanting to be a part of it. So now it's like, you know, I feel like there's a certain line, and exactly, you know, I feel like I'm a victim of what Doc Adam was saying, you know, on social media. If you look at, you know, one of my close friends that wasn't a DJ, he was saying this about my social media. He was like, it's very you know, cured very well. You know, it's curated. You can tell it's very, like, everything you post is thoughtful. There's a time and a place for it, and that's true. And this is, you know, back to where I don't post certain extracurricular activities that I, you know, might enjoy my whole life on my business thing brand wise now, because simply I have kids that follow me, you know, and not only do I have kids, I have their parents, you know, and I love all you guys. Some of these helicopter parents, even, you know, they get to know me real well. They're like, why does my kid like you so much, man? Like, I want to, and I'm like, who's this person on Twitter, you know? And I'm like, oh, Jimmy's mom, you know. So I think I'm you know, I think being self-conscious that I'm kind of being watched, every move, you know, keeps me walking that fine line. But keeping that mental attitude of knowing when to, you know, how to keep the line straight is the hard part.
You know, there's one thing that you said there that bothered the hell out of me. It's like when your friend said, "Oh man, your social media is curated so well," you know, like for some reason I hate that word, especially like, you know, if somebody told you that means like, you know, everybody's like very, very much like brand centric, you know, like trying to, you know, not, you know, post up the right thing, not the wrong thing, that sort of thing. You gotta walk that right line, you know.
Yeah, and I think I find that balance. It's just that, like, you know, I'm involved with so many things. This stuff, you know, content creation. You know, I think at the end of the day, I got into it as a DJ, and then what I'm finding myself.
That's another buzzword right there. Content creation.
Content creation.
It's like I feel like I'm just creating content. I know that word is those two words are like super awkward.
Optimizing your content.
We're creating content, guys. Like people are watching this content, you know, and they're I don't know. It's weird.
Well, the interesting thing really is like all of us are old enough to remember when you weren't on social media, and we were probably all still at an adult age, and there's a younger generation coming in that
scared for this.
Like my son is 6, and he's already understands all of this stuff. He knows what Instagram is. He knows. I mean, even though doesn't have an account or anything, but it's like he's being influenced by YouTubers that are his age that are doing like trick shot bottle flipping and stuff. It's crazy, the phenomenon of like bottle flipping, and like my son will sit around for like 3 hours and make these obstacle courses in our basement of like all these tricks that he has to get through. He's like making a gauntlet of bottle flips, you know, and he's like, I want to film them and put them on my YouTube channel. And I'm like, slow down, sport. You know, like.
Well, also, if you ask these kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Most of them will probably say, "Oh, I want to be a YouTuber."
Yo, they're so into it. They're so into it, and even like, you know, I like to brag on my kid, and like I'm actually the opposite of you, Art. Even on my brand, I usually post more like my family or other stuff because I kind of hate social media in that sense of trying to promote yourself, and I think it's kind of stupid to a degree. And like I always appreciate the guys that have really dope social media followings that I follow them for the friendship, or like that they're also a DJ, but their social media feed is totally non-DJ related.
That's some of the best tweets, man, ever.
Well, hold up real quick. Impulse, I know you're living the dad life right now. How do you talking about curated Instagrams and everything? Your photography's on point, but how do you feel in regards to like being a role model as a like self-made person on the internet, raising kids that are looking at that like, this is what I need to do?
So mine are 11 and 13, 2 girls, and they have never lived a life without internet or social media. So, you know, you have these moments where, you know, today, you know, they play this game called like Roblox, or I don't know what the fuck, I don't know what it's called. Anyway, so they play.
God, I need some Robux.
They play this game, right? And the younger one has spent more hours than I'd like to admit playing this game, and she's really good, and she has this like clout, and she's like in these servers with these famous YouTubers, and she's like, oh my god, I'm in here with blah blah blah, I'm on her YouTube, I'm in a video right now, and I'm like, ugh, there has to be more to life than you getting stoked. But I'm like, I don't like, I probably would have done the same thing if I was a kid. Like we always have to think back. It's like you guys were saying in the last episode about the younger generation and not having those experiences and knowing how to process them. And so, you know, when I see them get super excited off of something like that, I just have to kind of step back. But the older me is like, come on, bro. Like I don't am I failing as a parent? Like, because you're so stoked on this. So it's just well, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's like, and then as far as social media goes, I have their friends that follow me. Like the kids' friends follow me because they think I'm like the cool dad that like DJs and travels and does photography, and
you are.
Well, you have a cool ass Instagram. Yeah, I mean, you got.
Thank you, but like, but there came a point
But to you, you're you. I get it.
There came a point where I was like, I don't give a fuck about taking a picture in a DJ booth in front of a crowd anymore. Like, I'm so sick of seeing that shit. And I feel so bad for the people that was their whole life, is getting that shot, fucking air cannons going off and crowd and like all of that. Like, I feel for you. I don't know what the fuck you're doing with yourselves now, but cool.
Wait, is that you, bro? No, that's me off to the side. I'm gonna blocking my face.
But once I started like not caring about that, and I just kind of put out what I felt, and trust me, there are people that have very curated Instagrams, and they can only put out this one thing, and it sucks because you don't really know what else that person's into. You know, so it's like, you know, we have.
That's what I use my stories for.
Yeah.
Stories are totally in game. I post whatever.
For sure. But there's so many of us. Yeah. There's so much depth to all of us in this conversation and in our friends, and whether they're DJs or not. You know, you kind of want to know more about this person rather than just the same shit. Oh, I'm in an airport.
I think that's why I've kind of gravitated towards Twitter the most, because I feel like people just talk shit on there all day, and it really lets me know who they are more so than like Instagram does, because Instagram is, you're right. Instagram and Facebook are just like, it's so curated. Facebook is so mainstream and so business associated now that it kind of loses like it's lost the soul, you know. Totally. I feel like people just talk shit on Twitter all day, and that's why I think I enjoy that the most.
That's where I get my news.
That's where I definitely get my news.
Fastest place to get the news. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Or just know what's happening even at the street level of like where things are moving. I definitely remember, you know, Kim and I do gigs together, and I'll be like, hey, Kim, I've got to get this picture of you for Instagram and Kim would be like, all right, fine.
I don't want to be on the internet.
Yeah. Give us a bit of your perspective, you know, because you're kind of, I think, at an age where, you know, a lot of people your age especially are super all in on it, and they're living their whole life on it. And, you know, even when they only have 3 or 4 people watching them, they're like, you would think that they're talking to 10 million people right now on the internet, you know, the way the persona is. And you're like the opposite of that. So, I mean, just give us some insight into.
Well, first of all, Kim, have you posted anything on your Instagram? Because for the longest time, you had nothing in there.
Well, I did ultimately, so I was kind of running a social experiment of how many followers could I get if I never post a single post. And ultimately I did have to post because I was getting paid to do it. So I was like, okay, fine. But the funny thing about that is that people, because we like don't like, we live our lives on the internet now, so we don't like actually have real lives anymore. The funny thing about that is that once I started posting on Instagram, people would hit me up and they'd be like, oh, congrats, you finally got a gig. And I was like, bitch, I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, you just don't know me. You know what I mean? It's like, this post, I was paid. I had to do this so I could keep my gig, you know? Like, but this isn't the first time I've ever, like, been behind the deck.
Not my first
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I guess I'm a little old school. I deleted my Facebook like years ago. And the only reason why I even had it in the first place was because I thought I had to have it to be a DJ. But I just find all that social media just like a waste of time personally and toxic. And I'd rather just have like live in the real world with real people. And if people like feel like they don't know me because I'm not on social media and they're not like trying to actually reach out to me in real life, then I don't really need to, you know, worry about having a relationship with them. I just want to have like real people, real life, real experiences. And if that makes me like a weird, like technophobe or whatever, I don't know, like that, I'm cool with it. But I'm not about like the whole curating image, blah, blah, blah bullshit. Like I don't have time for that shit. kudos to people who do it and do it well. That's just not me.
Well, has anybody taken a break from social media, as in like deactivating like their Facebook or Instagram, taking
I
break,
want
and
to so
going
bad,
back
but I
into
haven't
it?
done it.
Because I know some DJs have done that, but
Does texting count as social media?
I would say no, because there's no algorithm controlling any of it.
group texting.
I feel like
I was hoping somebody would jump on that.
No, I think it does personally, but that's
Really? I was like,
yeah.
because I gave it all up.
my way to balance it is I have all these social media accounts, but if you actually know me, people will say, I know you're around, but I can never get in touch with you. It's because I'm not paying attention to that shit. Sure, I'm getting all this Facebook messages and Instagram DMs, and when I go, it's like all this shit, and I miss stuff. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, I just ignore it because I have other shit going on. So keep yourself busy, and all that stuff will have to come second. And you have to play catch up. And best place to do that is like what, on the toilet or I don't know, being real.
ID used to have a Poopstagram.
Yeah.
Yeah. So real quick, it's funny that we're talking about all of this stuff because I actually ordered a flip phone for this reason. So because I need to check emails. I need now that I need to respond to people for work.
Yeah.
I don't need. I can open my computer and do that in the mornings or in the evenings. But I don't. I need to be able to get a hold of. I have a family, but I don't need all the other bullshit. So
wow.
in comes the
Motorola.
Back to the razor.
You need to send that text though. You're like, you hit 3.
No,
twice.
The
I don't
T9.
know
What?
You're playing Snake on your phone.
Listen, just call me. just call me. If you need to talk to me, then call me. But that's what it's going to be, and I'm going to. It sucks that we have to do that, or that I'm doing that, but I feel like it's the only way. I'm not as addicted to the phone as I once was.
You've changed, man. You've changed
a lot.
A lot. No.
But yeah, I mean, it's worth giving a shot. It could totally change the way I look or live or see things. Like if it costs me $100 to give it a shot, then fuck it. But I'm gonna see what happens. But the shit is toxic. Like it's not. It's
an addiction.
It's meant to keep you on, and I don't.
Dude,
It reminds
beeper, pager,
Beeper. There we go.
back.
Hell yeah!
Take it way back.
Way pager.
Hit me on the hip.
Yo, you could just be like, if you wanna get in touch with me today, send a courier with a message.
Pigeon.
Get that pigeon.
Hell yeah!
And what were you about to say?
I was gonna say, it just reminds me of a recent South Park episode where, like, everyone's like wearing boxes over their heads, and there's like these two teachers that want to have a relationship, but they can't because it's like unprofessional. And they're like, wait, everyone's like got a box over their head, so we can just do whatever we want, and they like live their lives, and it's like a great thing. And I kind of feel that way sometimes. I'm like, hey, I'm having this great life, and everyone else has got like a box over their head, aka like their phone right here or whatever. They're too busy like posing for photos or whatever. But I just don't think that.
Oh, so they weren't wearing boxes.
No,
They're
the
the
people
only
who
two.
like actually got to live their lives took the boxes off, like liberated themselves, right? So that's kind of how I see it too. It's just like, do I actually feel good when I'm on social media? Like, no, that shit brings me down, right? Like,
Yeah.
You see things that you
I don't
don't
need
want
to
to
waste
see.
time
You see,
on that.
yeah, and then you see things that you don't want to see.
Oh
Exactly.
my god, I could go on forever about that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, look what it did to us. Look what it did to all of our during everything that's happened this year. So yeah, you're right. So just being able to disconnect. I mean, I've even like started shooting like film photography again, and like just completely disconnecting and just not worrying about it, you know.
I mean, I think
not to mention that some of these companies are responsible for some pretty like horrible things, right? I'm like, I can't in good conscience like support like a company like Facebook because of like the crazy shit that they do to the world, right?
I mean,
like
the business model is social manipulation, really. You know, for all these companies that are in like
the part of that movie that
for evil.
The part of that movie that really fucked me up is when they were talking about how they could just basically turn a dial to where they wanted to boost something in certain parts of the world. What? Like,
I mean, they can manipulate the narrative so easily.
Exactly.
But I also to play slightly devil's advocate on that. It's like, hasn't that always been happening since the dawn of man, though, in one way or another, right?
Yes.
Like, because like there was a time in centuries where only a very certain amount of people could even read, you know. So it's like you could manipulate history, manipulate language, manipulate culture, and it's been happening. It's just happening different, and it's a question that I think you know, as DJs, we're told that you can't get that club gig unless you have so many likes on the post of the flyers. Like that's how you're getting booked. And, you know, it's almost such a necessity to that type of gig. And so when you combine the need for the social media as your success avenue, and you combine that with the fact that COVID has taken away the business that you use for that avenue, how does our DJs more, you know, we see even people, not just DJs, it's not fair to say, but anybody in the nightlife industry or in the entertainment industry that is out of work or been out of work, you know, when it's connected to that side of your successes through the postings of your work, and you don't have either, is that like a double whammy to their mental health? Is that where we're seeing so much of anxiousness with people in the nightlife industry?
I think it has to do more with people not knowing that there's wool in front of their eye. Let me tell a quick story. So there was a time in my career very early on where I was, all right, I'm going all in on DJing, but I had been working with this record label, and I was the tour DJ and I was a studio engineer. And the way that the record label functioned, it was a hip hop label, was all the artists had one job. Your job was to go to the studio and have things written when you get to the studio and do nothing but get the things that you wrote into the microphone so we can make the music. The producers had to just produce. My job as the DJ was to be ready for the show, but they had a videographer, and this is what really kind of shaped my entire perspective of like Instagram when it got big. The videographer's job was everywhere any of us went to be filming. So we got used to the feeling of having a video camera filming us all the time. And then he was also an actual videographer, so he would chop up little reels so we could post some stuff on social media. And then we started seeing, this is like right at the beginning of YouTube, we start to see, based on like spending hundreds of hours together, what he put together was not real life. We were all there. We were sleep drunk at 4 a.m. most Fridays, but people saw us and it looked like a thing that was really, really important, really worth following. And that's what made them pay attention to the music. So fast forward, my perspective on Instagram specifically when it got big, but social media in general, I've always been into technology, but then it was always in the back of my mind. I know that there's a machine curating all of this, trying to make this look clickable, make this look like something you should pay attention to. And the moment that I started realizing I was part of the problem was when I started trying to find opportunities where I know if I have a certain number of followers, if I look a certain way on my feed, then they're going to pay me what I'm asking. And then I started trying to like fit it into the mold on what everybody clicks on in order to get the gig, and it worked. So when I say to Brian's question earlier, to Gio's question earlier, of I want to disconnect from social media, I know that there's someone controlling the things that people click on and things that make me feel like I got to chase that rabbit, but I still am caught in the maze. And I think that's the big thing that's really messed me up throughout a lot of 2020 is I know that there's all this bullshit around this, and I don't need to play the game, but my career is dependent on it. That's the hardest part for me.
I think what's interesting to think about. Well, I mean, there's like a bunch of different thoughts I'm having. Like, what's interesting to think about is like what you were just describing is very different from what I think the vast majority of people on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I think those two platforms in particular, less so TikTok, less so Snapchat for obvious reasons. But you're describing the same behavior that most people engage in a lot of ways. The difference is that most of them are essentially playing a game. The second South Park reference are essentially playing a game of like underpants gnomes, right? First season, first episode, right? Where it's essentially like write good tweet, ? Profit, right? Like that's the game plan, right? Because there's like that's essentially what people are doing, even if they're not saying it out loud. Is there's this like weird unconscious, I think, quite literally unconscious, that they don't know they have it. There's this sense that like this is my route to fame, right? This is going to be the thing that's going to get me famous and make me money eventually somehow or another, right? Like, which is why if you follow me on Twitter, I'm always theorizing about what I've not my thing, what people call like the take economy, like the hot take economy, where it's essentially just like you try to say the thing that's going to get the reaction because somehow some part of your brain thinks that actually turns into money in some capacity or another. The difference with you is that you actually do make money, right? Like there actually is you have an actual, from like a financial perspective, you have a very clear reason why you're doing the things that you're doing. It does that mean it's not a bummer or frustrating or whatever? No, of course not. Like I'm not going to say that's not the case, but there is actually like an output, right? There's a quantifiable output in the form of currency in a bank account, right? Enabling you to pay for goods and services out in the world. Like the vast majority of people are doing all that same shit, but for ? You know what I mean? Like there's no, so that I think is like that when I earlier on when I said it's turning us all into brands, right? Like that's really what I meant, because like for you are a brand online. Every DJ I know is a brand online. Like even though the way I use Twitter, like I don't try to use Twitter anyway. I just tweet whatever the hell is going on in my head at any given moment in time. And it's mostly like I'm always shocked when I keep getting new followers, and a lot of them are like DJs and stuff. I'm like, I never tweet about music. Like I just tweet about like politics and philosophy. Like that's it. Like I never talk about music. And I'm like, but I think like I'm like, oh, people are actually like interested because I seem like a human. I think there's this sense that I'm like, oh, he seems like just a guy. Like I feel like this is probably what it's actually like to hang out with him, and I'm not wrong. But pretty much but even that is a brand. You know what I mean? Whether I want it to be or not. Like I have now created expectations in other people's mind about who I am when they meet me. You know what I mean? And that projecting of myself out into the world is a brand. And even though in doing it, I'm not like consciously curating that brand. When I might meet someone, I might have this moment of like, shit, they're going to expect me to be like that guy on Twitter. Like, I'm kind of tired right now. Like, I don't feel like I've got anything clever to say. Like what the fuck am I going to do now? I think that something. I don't actually lost track of who said it. Somebody said earlier, but like, we've always been this way, right? And I think that's a really important thing to remember. Like, we act like social media is this like terrible devil that came flying out of nowhere. Like, we've been being propagandized to since the first time that anything resembling a civilization formed, when there was people controlling knowledge. Like that is human history is the history of propaganda, right? And it's the history of who controls the power, who controls the levers of propaganda at whatever given point in time. Like for a long time it was religion. It was religion, and then it pivoted its way around through capital markets and whatever. And then for most of the 20th century in America, it was advertising. Straight on, right? If you go back and read Edward Bernays, who is Sigmund Freud's cousin, who's the father of PR, public relations, like as a genre. Like Edward Bernays was the first public relations specialist, and he created that world. And he was literally Sigmund Freud's brother, right? Or cousin. So he was just like taking everything from cousin and was like, I know how to manipulate people. I can get into the back of their heads, whatever. Like literally the entire advertising is the precursor to social media, right? In the sense that like social media is Like it only exists in order
put a message
to
out
put
there.
well, and not just that. It only exists because advertisers advertise on it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if the advertising dollars go away, the social media companies cease to exist. Like advertising is the economy, right? It is the entirety of the economy. So like these are just new conduits of you being advertised to, propagandized by corporations, right? And so essentially, like it's not like social media didn't used to exist. It just used to be billboards. You know what I mean? And now it's your phone, right? But so it's not a novelty that has come out of nowhere. It's an upgrade, right? It's an upgrade, and it's an optimization, right? To use its own language, right? It's an optimization of a process that people have been doing since as long as human history has been a thing. Which isn't to say it's a good thing. I think it's just I think sometimes we get a little bit like we're in this unprecedented state that no one's ever been in. It's like we're in a shade of a state, that people have been in for a very, very long time. But anyway, yeah, I think the reason I started blabbering about this in the first place was just like you're an exception, right? Like you could start. I saw somebody like even the chat was talking about Finstas. Like you could very easily just have a second social, if you wanted to have a separate social media account where you just post whatever the hell you feel like, and then you can maintain the brand page because you have a reason to have a brand page. I'm going back to what I started with, but like I think when you start thinking about how many people are using social media, right, as a brand, right, but there's no outcome, there's no output, right? They don't get anything from it. That's when you start really
the output.
Yeah, that's when you start being like, shit, that's really fucking weird. And that's why I said like that's weird, and like how is that affecting you?
There is a new job title called influencer.
Yeah.
And like these young kids want, that's what they're looking for. Is they're looking for one of their tweets or one of their posts or something they do to become popular, and to the point where they could continue to do that and get paid to do that. Like they're all hoping for that one shot at.
That's like
fame,
corporate. It's a corporate term for that.
I always say like
I've been influencing before it became a thing.
I mean, just imagine if Andy Warhol had been alive during social media. To see like him coining that phrase. About 15 minutes of fame was like we had no idea. Just in the sense of how you can just the viralness of social media and how that affects and how that affects people, with wanting the likes, like just on that just desire the like train, or paying for likes or all these things that people do to manipulate their popularity or make themselves feel better, quite frankly. And I think it would be almost foolish of anybody to say that they've never felt that to a certain degree. It's like
No, I mean, I had some tweet get like 2,400 retweets or something a week or so ago. Like it was about when Eddie Van Halen died, because I tweeted this link. I tweeted like screen grabs of this story. It's a true story about how Eddie Van Halen practiced with Limp Bizkit at one point in time after Wes Borland left the band, and then he hated them, and so he left, and he like abandoned ship on the whole thing, and he couldn't get. He kept calling to get his gear back, and they wouldn't bring it. And so he drove to Fred Durst's house in an armored vehicle and like basically threatened him with a gun and got all his shit back. And I was like, this is just, a hilariously absurd story. The thing got like, 2,500 or some odd retweets. And I'm not going to lie. Like, I was like, oh, this is dope. I was very pleased with myself, throughout the duration of that time. Did something just go wonky with it?
Yeah, something just happened.
It looks like the entire thing wanted to reset itself.
Oh, there. Looks like everyone's back.
Damn it, Bert, what'd you do? I didn't do anything.
I pressed the big red button. Was I not supposed to press that?
It was like dominoes. Like everybody
Do not press.
Oh, we're still recording.
Chris was in mid-conversation, and then speaking, and then Doc was speaking.
Doc froze, and then basically like the program froze up.
Completely did like a hard reset.
Yeah, did a hard reset. So it's probably.
He said in the chat, "We'll edit that later."
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that later.
It's the Chinese government listening in on us.
They're like, shit, people are onto us.
Like a big like
stock
static
value.
screen, and
They're like, wait, we're like the equivalent of blackjack players that are reading the cards. They're like, all you guys have to go.
Straight up.
They heard us talking about it.
Well, given the tech crash, I feel like this is a reasonable transition. Chris Bear, we haven't really had a chance to talk about your expertise in research with psilocybin and MDMA. I think that would be something really interesting for our audience to listen to. And also, I'm curious if you can go in a little bit into what that looks like, what that is positioned to do.
yeah, sure, thanks. I guess first of all, I have to say for everybody out there, this isn't an endorsement to go try these things. They are illegal, so I just want to be really clear about that. But there is research underway that's sanctioned by the FDA. The FDA has actually given psilocybin breakthrough therapy, which is giving it the ability to move through the trials faster than, say, other drugs due to very promising initial results in the research. And MDMA is in phase 3, which means it's probably going to clear the final hurdles next 2 years, I'm guessing. I mean, don't quote me on that, but it's coming up. And just like we had this kind of reboot that just happened with Zoom, you can kind of use that metaphor for how these substances operate in the human mind. A lot of the way we're all keeping track of each other right now is through this thing called the default mode network, which is a constellation of different stuff going on in your head, mostly just filtering out all the neurological stuff that we don't need to keep track of this moment so that we can pay attention. So if you're like super duper ADD, you probably experience a lot more thoughts coming in. But, like if we have this thing, this filtering system, and we can just kind of like turn the volume down on it, we don't have to turn it all the way down, but turn it down somewhat. The brain kind of has a big party and the neurons all crossfire. And when it does that, it kind of is like, I guess the metaphor from one of the main researchers is it's almost like a snow globe. Everything goes up. There's a lot of cross-referencing that happens up there, like different things going on. And then when the snow comes back down, all the old tracks that were there that may have been laid are all in a fresh blanket of snow. And so in a therapeutic model, people that have experienced trauma, addiction, depression, anxiety, PTSD, they get a shot at maybe really getting a chance to recategorize or redesignate their relationship with that event in a far more constructive and healthy manner. And the therapist doesn't really do much. It's like the joke in the therapy is that the music does a lot of the work. Music takes the person into a place where they can relax and they ride that current of spirit, and those are my words at least, spirit, and it takes them on their own journey, and the psyche wants to heal. And so it starts that process, and the therapist's role in that is really just to keep the person safe, help them have a constructive experience, mostly by staying out of the way. So it's almost like metaphor. It's a little bit like DJing, right? I mean, you're there to set the stage. The audience is going to do what the audience is going to do. The collective psyche of that group is doing what you do, and you are there to help let them have a really good time, keep them safe as best you can, and hope that everybody has a healing experience, right? I mean, that was the way I looked at it. So that's the analog for how that stuff kind of meets together in my own life.
What applications are you specifically like? Where could you see this treatment being the most impactful?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the funny thing is that we're doing it, the research community. I'm just a designer, so I get to like hang out with all these super smart people. They're doing it really for things like depression, like what they call major depression disorder, or medically non-responsive depression, like the really hard stuff that people can't escape. or trauma, like take a look at what's going on in our country right now. We have a lot of intergenerational trauma, and this is just starting to become a tool that we might be able to figure out a way to completely help people like heal all of the things that have come like through generations of trauma, and they're still carrying all that load, right? But the other thing is that I'd say downstream a little further that it could even be something for healthy, normal people in that like in the therapeutic setting. So I'm talking really about like above ground, like, you know, in a building with like people wearing, you know, not white coats, but like something like where you go, come on in and take a seat, you know, not
like a safe space.
Yeah, exactly.
And what
of course,
about?
Mhm.
What about? I'm sorry to interrupt. Like mushrooms and stuff like that. Is that all in the same realm of treatments, or is that?
Yeah. So the mushrooms, the psilocybin is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, and that's the reason the researchers went down that avenue is LSD just had too much of a charge on it.
Mm-hmm.
And psilocybin could outrun the stigma faster. Psilocybin is also natural, right?
Right.
The research version's being conducted with a pharmaceutical version of it. And MDMA, which was made by Sasha Shulgin out in West Coast, I guess it was in the 80s, was just synthesized. And he was kind of like this genius, you know, person, and put all these compounds together and tried them out. And that one, as we all know, is like an empathogen. So it's not a hallucinogen, but it really brings out empathy so that people can turn down the fear and then become more receptive both to themselves and to other people. I mean, as a lot of DJs understand, I guess.
I saw that that documentary on Netflix. I forgot what it was called, but it was about psychedelics. I don't know if anyone else
Have a Good
saw
Trip.
it. Yes, Have a Good Trip. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
They talked about that like for like a split
Yeah.
second. They were saying like that mushrooms were being tested or being researched for patients on their deathbed, basically to make the transition easier. So they're not like, you know, they're happy or they're at peace when they
that's the work
go.
that I'm involved with mostly right now. We're opening a trial in about 2 weeks for cancer patients that have tough diagnoses, and also for their loved ones who are caring for them. So you know, it's stressful if you have cancer because, you know, you don't want everyone else to feel the burden. So you're like, shit, I'm really sick, but I don't want my caregiver to like feel bad. And the caregiver's like, I don't know what to do with this person. I love them. They're dying. Like, fuck, what do I do? So that's one trial that's happening. If you really want to check out some powerful shit, check out the movie A New Understanding. It's free on YouTube. And that file is only 60 minutes, and it follows the journey of these cancer patients as they go from this through psilocybin therapy, and it's pretty mind-blowing. So that's the one I would say. And the other one that if you really want to learn a lot about psilocybin as a powerful agent and fungus in general is Fantastic Fungi, which is just also ridiculous. And that one is like a visual explosion. So once you look at that, like kick back however you like to kick back on the couch and put that on and just like you pretty cool.
Kick back with a couple of caps, bro. It might as well.
Hey, you didn't hear that from me, but you can do that however you want to. However you like to kick back, you may kick back. So yeah, it holds a lot of promise, and I mean on the subject of mental health, you know, I mean I don't want to get too like out over my skis on this, but we may be really entering a new era of healing for people that is very, very promising and very, very exciting. And the key now is to not fuck it up. Is to not like they did in the 60s, like throw the drugs in the street and go bananas. It's just to like step by step by step. So
dope. Well,
That's awesome.
Well, guys, it's time to end the show. Once again, we went overtime, but lots of good stuff there. This has been a really, really good episode. Very educational, especially since most of us really opened up our feelings on this. So hopefully the audience learned something, can take something from this episode. So once again, give it up one more time for our special guest these past couple weeks. Doc Adams, DJ Koo, Impulse, Alchemist, and Chris Bear.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having this conversation with us and schooling us.
Definitely. As always, to everybody tuning in to our show on Twitch, please stay in the chat. We are going to pay it forward by supporting another DJ and rating their channel once our show goes off the air, so stay put. If you missed any of our episodes, you can watch our past shows on facebook.com/BeatRefinery or youtube.com/BeatRefinery. If you prefer to listen to the audio side of things, this episode will be uploaded this Thursday to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you consume and listen to all things podcasts. So make sure to click like, comment, and subscribe. Come back and tune in with us again next Monday, 9 p.m. East Coast time. Next week, we're going to do our season finale and take a little break after that. But for next week's episode, we're actually going to go live this time around. I sure hope most of you, tuning into the show know that this has been pre-recorded this past season. So surprise, I guess. But next Monday, we're going live. We're probably going to bring back Sean's tech tip of the week. Some As One's DJ tip, maybe some, DJs playing a set, but it's a free-for-all. We'll probably have some special guests on that season finale, but we're definitely going live, and we will definitely want to talk to our audience and just, chop it up with them. So thanks again to everybody for tuning in. Election day is tomorrow. So once again, voice your opinion. Make sure to rock that ballot and vote. Vote, guys. Keep wearing a mask. Spread some love. We'll see you guys next week for the season finale. We're going live once again. So everybody, say peace out. Vote. Let's go. Headphones.